As shocking as this may sound, many juvenile criminals have gotten the ultimate penalty: life in prison. In case you are wondering what these minors did to end up with such a grave penalty, make sure to stick around till the end of the video as we bring you the 10 most dangerous kids that got life in jail. 10. Roxana Sikorsky. The story of 17-year-old Roxana Sikorsky is nothing like you've ever imagined. And crazily enough, her victims were her own family. But behind this gruesome plan was not only Roxana but also her adult partner at the time. All of this began in October 2014 when she was just 15 years old. Roxana had sprung up from her bed that night with the most terrifying idea. Her dark idea was to murder her younger brother, and this was fueled by her insane need to destroy her entire family, from her parents to her siblings. Thankfully, this plan of hers fell through, and the Sikorsky family survived. With time, it was discovered that Roxana had had a very traumatic upbringing. Roxana had been diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder due to the trauma she had experienced as a child. This mental disease severely affected her ability to build any form of emotional bond with her main carers, and explains the reason behind her horrific plans. To be fair to Roxana, she exhibited genuine guilt in court, and even apologized for disappointing her parents. On the one hand, her adult lover, who had encouraged this behavior and plan, was given a life sentence after he was convicted on all 7 counts. On the other hand, although Roxana's involvement was clear, her age and disturbing history compelled the court to consider the idea of rehabilitation and atonement. Regardless, Roxana was given a sentence of 10 to 20 years. According to the court, Roxana had to pay for her crimes, making her an example for many other juveniles. But given that she's our number 10, it's safe to say that she wasn't the perfect example. 9. Antonio Barbeau. Antonio happened to be one of the 2 youths responsible for the death of an elderly woman. All of the information surrounding this despicable shook the tight-knit town of Sheboygan Falls in September 2012. Here's what makes this news even more shocking. The 78-year-old Barbara Olson, whom Antonio murdered with a hatchet and hammer, was his great-grandmother. Following several months of legal processes and close examination, Antonio unexpectedly pleaded no contest to first-degree intentional homicide. This meant that while Antonio had accepted the conviction, he didn't admit guilt. Antonio was pleading not guilty due to mental health sickness, but one thing was clear, and that was the fact that Antonio had the understanding that his despicable action had ruined so many lives. It was also discovered that cognitive impairments caused by a traumatic experience when he was just 10 could have been the reason for his behavior. Antonio had been hit by a car at a very young age, and that went on to affect his decisions. But, even more importantly, it went on to ruin his future. At the end of his trial, Antonio was given a life sentence with the possibility of release in 36 years. But 2048 is going to be a long time. 8. Jessica Caroline. At the time of the events that claimed 2 innocent lives, Jessica was only 17 years old. Jessica had slammed her car into the Wyoming Medical Center, and this led to a lot of change in the lives of all that were involved. At the end of the day, Jessica pleaded guilty to 2 charges, taking full responsibility for her actions. On the day of the incident, Jessica was driving eastbound on 2nd Street to the Wyoming Medical Center. But things immediately went south as the car drove off the road and immediately hit a sign in front of the hospital just before the car slammed the main structure. This was indeed a tragic incident, as the lives of 27-year-old Braden Avery and Amanda Strickland were lost. During the investigation, an air duster can was found in the car. This gave them the idea that Jessica was under the influence during the crash, to which she admitted. Interestingly, it was found that Jessica was driving at a speed of 76 miles per hour at the time. Like that wasn't bad enough, neither Jessica nor her victims had seatbelts on. In the end, Jessica was given a 16-year sentence. 7. Bever brother. In 2015, the Bever family became the talk of the town in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, when the most devastating acts led to the demise of 5 of the family members, except 2. After the remains of the Bever family were found, a rabbit hole of information was dug open. A young girl and another infant girl were discovered to be alive as they clung to their lives. Thankfully, they were very instrumental in justice being served on behalf of the rest of their family. As the older girl gave her statement, she mentioned the names of her brothers, Robert, 18, and Michael, 16, as the culprits. Both young boys were then arrested and charged with their crimes. And for the rest of the town, everyone was petrified. The investigations uncovered a very frightening motive. Robert admitted to wanting to become a legendary serial killer, and so he pleaded guilty to the allegations against him later in 2017. He was then given a life sentence with no chance of release. Michael, on the other hand, wasn't any better as he housed a similar darkness. And after being convicted by a jury of his peers, he was given 5 consecutive life sentences. 6. Sierra Halseth. After the deed had been done, it was time for the court to decide the fate of 2 young people, 16-year-old Sierra Halseth and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero. Sierra had been responsible for the murder of her father, Daniel Halseth, in April 2021. She and her boyfriend had attacked Daniel with a knife, and in an attempt to cover up their tracks, Sierra and Aaron planned to mess with the body of their victim and then run away using the victim's vehicle. The punishment for this horrific crime was a life sentence with the possibility of release only after 22 years. The couple was found guilty by District Judge Kiara Joan after they both confessed to their crimes. Sierra's demeanor in the court, however, raised many questions. What could have pushed her so much into the darkness that consumed her? 5. Philip Chisholm. At the young age of 14, Philip Chisholm committed the most disturbing crime that left the entire nation cold. Philip's unfortunate victim was Colleen Ritzer, a math teacher and role model to many at Danvers High School. Who would have thought that her student would ultimately be responsible for her demise? In the courtroom, Salem Superior Court Judge David Lowy read Chisholm's punishment, as his actions required a resolute response from the law. Chisholm's defense counsel, though, tried creating a mental illness narrative to easily explain his acts. These claims, however, were rejected, and the jury held Chisholm accountable for his terrible actions. In the end, Chisholm was given a life sentence with the possibility of release after 25 years. Additionally, the young man was also made to serve 40 years in prison for his cruelty and robbery counts. 4. James Fairweather. This unhinged 15-year-old with an odd desire to become a renowned serial killer was given a 27 years jail sentence after orchestrating the savage deaths of his 2 victims. Given that both these victims died at his hands, it marked him off as a culprit of horrible crimes. Fairweather's first victim was James Atfield on March 24, 2014. After Atfield was attacked by Fairweather, he suffered irreversible brain damage and died. 3 months later, James was out again for blood, and his victim this time was recognized as Nahid Al-Manea. She was a 31-year-old Saudi student at the University of Essex. Thankfully, in May 2015, Fairweather was finally captured while planning to strike a 3rd time. In court, Fairweather had no sense of remorse and took full responsibility for both crimes, pleading guilty to all charges. It was later discovered that the majority of his adolescent years were wrecked by bullying due to his big ears. To make matters worse, Fairweather also experienced neurodevelopmental conditions, such as dyslexia and autism. Although these issues help to explain his actions, they in no way justify them. And considering the weight of his actions, his punishment was not approached with any form of compassion. 3. Nehemiah Griego. At the young age of 15, Nehemiah committed a gruesome act that destroyed his entire family. Nehemiah forcefully snuffed out the lives of his parents and 3 younger siblings with 2 different weapons in October 2015. Realizing the weight of his actions, the young boy pleaded guilty to his actions. At the time, a penalty appropriate for his age was requested, given that he was still a young teenager. However, later in 2019, that decision was reversed, and he was made to face the consequences of his actions as an adult. Nehemiah confessed that his motive was due to the hatred he had for his mother. However, The gruesomeness surrounding the crime and the number of people involved led to Nehemiah getting a sentence of 120 years behind bars. He was then given 3 concurrent life sentences, and credit was given to the 6 years and 285 days already spent. Hence, he was expected to serve at least 30 years before a possibility of release could be considered. 2. T.J. Lane. Unlike the many names on this list, T.J.'s story is quite complex. This 17-year-old former Chardon High School student destroyed several lives after his violent outburst on February 27th. T.J. was responsible for the murder of 3 students at Chardon High School, leaving 3 others injured. According to witnesses, it was discovered that T.J. had had some personal issues with one of the victims who rode the bus with him. T.J. had therefore attacked his schoolmates with a .22 caliber pistol, and while 2 only had to be hospitalized, 1 was left permanently paralyzed. T.J. was initially arrested as a juvenile at the time of the crime while he awaited trial as an adult or as a kid. T.J. had ruined the promising lives of 3 of his schoolmates, but yet showed no sign of remorse as he made terrible and insulting statements toward the families. Eventually, the young man made a guilty plea and was given 3 life terms with no chance of parole. In the end, T.J. ruined his own life, as he would now be spending the rest of his young life behind bars. 1. Petri Kurtti was just about 13 years of age when he acquired the title of UK's youngest and most vicious criminal. Following the removal of the reporting restriction order, the young child was identified to be Petri Kurtti and was given a 12-year sentence for the gruesome death of Glynis Bensley. This horrific crime had been caught on CCTV as it showed Kurtti's attack and proceeded to snuff the life out of Bensley as he stamped her face. After committing this crime, Kurtti ran into a close park in Smithwick, West Midlands, and boasted of his actions. It was discovered that Zohaib Majib, who happened to be Kurtti's co-defendant, was also involved in the crime. Therefore, Majid was given a 10-year sentence. It was also realized by Judge John Warner that Kurtti had suffered a troubled past with no form of limit or structure created in his home. A statement from the court read, "The boy's parents failed to recognize the seriousness of his acts, transferring blame to others and adding to his unwillingness to accept responsibility for his crimes." It was said that Majid and Kurtti had mistaken Bensley for a male due to her attire and hairdo. After the trial, Kurtti was found guilty. Many have wondered what may have influenced his aggressive behavior. According to the detective chief inspector in charge of the investigation, Kurtti and Majid had the intention of using violence on their victims, and Glynis Bensley, unfortunately, lost her life to this effect. For more stories like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Thank you for watching.